He walked out on our family. Months later, I met his new wife in the most horrifying way. The first time I saw the crack in our living room ceiling, Mark told me not to worry. All houses settle, he'd said, his architect's eyes already calculating repair costs. 6 months after he walked out, that crack had become the centerpiece of my life, a jagged scar across our home that mirrored the one across my heart. He left on a Tuesday. I came home from picking up our daughter Chloe from soccer practice to find a single sheet of his architectural grid paper on the kitchen island. No wedding ring, no personal note, just clinical, precise handwriting. Eleanor, the return on investment for this family unit has proven unsustainable. The emotional expenditure consistently outweighs dividends. I am liquidating my position effective immediately. Do not contact me, Mark. Our son Liam found me sobbing on the kitchen floor. At 10 years old, he understood enough to know his father wasn't coming back. 7-year-old Chloe kept asking if Daddy was on a business trip, her small voice growing more uncertain each time she asked. The months that followed were a brutal education in survival. Mark had taken $85,000 from our joint accounts, his initial investment, as he'd noted in the attached spreadsheet. I learned our health insurance lapsed the day he left. Chloe's asthma medication cost $400 a month without it. Liam started stuttering again, something he hadn't done since he was 5. I took a second job working nights at a call center. The house fell into disrepair around us. That crack in the ceiling seemed to grow wider every day, like it was trying to swallow what remained of our family. Chloe's 8th birthday arrived on a rain-soaked October day. I'd worked 60 hours that week, but I'd managed to save enough for the glitter glow doll she'd been dreaming of. When she tore open the wrapping paper, her scream of joy was the first genuine happiness I'd heard in our house since Mark left. "Mommy, she's perfect." Chloe hugged the doll tightly. Daddy always said he liked sparkly things. "Can we send him a picture?" Liam, sitting at the kitchen table doing homework, went completely still. The air grew thick enough to choke on. "Baby," I said, my voice cracking. "Daddy, he doesn't live with us anymore." Her face crumpled. The light in her eyes vanished, but he'd want to see her. He would. That hope in her voice, so fragile, so persistent, shattered something in me. I couldn't breathe. The walls, stained with memories of a life that no longer existed, felt like they were closing in. "I have to run to the store," I choked out, grabbing my keys. "I'll be back soon." I fled to the sterile, fluorescent haven of a 24-hour supermarket. I needed to be anonymous. Just another ghost in the night, where no one knew my pain or my story. The mirror, I was in the cleaning supplies aisle, staring blankly at a wall of bleach bottles, when I saw him. Mark. He stood at the end of the aisle, his back to me. I'd know the set of his shoulders, the way he held his head, anywhere. My heart seized. A torrent of rage, grief, and a pathetic, traitorous flicker of hope flooded through me. He wasn't alone. A woman stood with him. She had the same shade of honey blonde hair I'd had before stress and poverty turned it dull. She was slender, like I used to be. She held his arm, leaning into him with an easy intimacy that felt like a violation. She pointed to a brand of laundry detergent, and he laughed. The sound, so familiar and carefree, was a knife in my soul. This was her, the new wife, the reason. I should have turned away, but a morbid, devastating curiosity rooted me to the spot. I needed to see the face of the woman who was worth the destruction of our family. He turned, his eyes scanning the aisle, and they landed on me. The smile vanished from his face, replaced by pure, unadulterated panic. It was the look of a man who had been caught in a grave. The woman turned, following his gaze. Our eyes met, and the world dropped out from under me. The air left my lungs. My knees buckled. I gripped a shelf of ammonia bottles to keep from falling. Because I was looking at a ghost, I was looking at me. Not a woman who resembled me. It was my face, my exact bone structure, the same small scar through my left eyebrow from a childhood fall, the same slight crook in my nose from when I fell off my bike at 12. She was wearing a style of clothing I would have chosen, a simple blue sweater and dark jeans, but newer, fresher, unfaded by grief and cheap detergent. We were mirror images, separated by 10 feet of linoleum. The only difference was the life in our eyes. Mine were hollowed with shock and despair. Hers were calm, serene. And in their depths, I saw a flicker of recognition that was far more horrifying than surprise. Mark stepped in front of her, a protective gesture that felt more violent than a shove. "Eleanor," he breathed, my name a curse on his lips. I couldn't speak. My mind was frantically trying to reject the evidence of my own eyes. A twin? I was an only child. A coincidence? The statistical impossibility was laughable. The woman, this imposter, gently moved Mark's arm aside. She looked at me and her lips curved into a small, sad smile. It was my smile. "He's safe now," she said, and her voice was my voice, the cadence, the tone, everything. "He's happy. You need to let him go." Her words in my own voice were a psychological violation I could not comprehend. This wasn't just an affair. This was something far more sinister, far more deeply disturbing. He hadn't just found a new woman. He had found a replica of the woman he'd left, a version stripped of the burdens of motherhood and financial struggle. A raw, guttural sound ripped from my throat. I stumbled backward, turned, and ran. I fled the store, the concerned calls of a stock boy a distant echo. I collapsed against my steering wheel, sobbing, the world a smear of tears and terror. The investigation, the days that followed, were a descent into a special kind of hell. Paranoia became my constant companion. I stopped sleeping. I started drinking cheap wine just to quiet the screaming in my head. The image of my own face, calm and pitying, was burned onto the back of my eyelids. I hired a private investigator, a grizzled former cop named Frank. I gave him Mark's name, the date, the location. I couldn't bring myself to describe the woman. How could I? Find the woman who looks exactly like me? Frank called me a week later. "I found him," he said, his voice grim. "He's living in a high-end apartment complex across town, registered under his name. He's got a woman living with him." My heart hammered. What does she look like? There's not a lot of clear photos. She seems reclusive, but from what I could get. "Mrs. Walsh, you need to prepare yourself. The resemblance is striking. Striking. A professional's understatement for the utterly horrifying." He emailed me the photos. Grainy, long lens shots. Mark getting into his car. Mark carrying groceries. And then, one of them together, walking a small dog. Her face was partially turned away, but it was enough. It was me. It was my profile, my hair, my posture. A new, more chilling horror began to dawn. This wasn't a random, freakish coincidence. This was deliberate. I began to dig into our past obsessively. I went through old photo albums, yearbooks, everything. And then I found it. Tucked in the back of a college scrapbook, a faded Polaroid. Mark and me, arms around each other, laughing at a campus party. And standing just behind us, slightly out of focus, was another girl. She had my hair, my build. Her features were similar, but not identical. Her name was Sarah Miller. She had been in a few of my art history classes, quiet, unassuming, a little intense. She had had a crush on Mark, I remembered vaguely. I'd found it flattering, even funny at the time. She'd tried to dress like me, style her hair like me. We'd lost touch after graduation. The pieces, monstrous and unbelievable, began to click into place. I found her on social media. Her profiles were sparse, but there were a few public photos. Over the years, in the pictures she posted, her face had subtly changed. Her nose was straighter. Her eyebrows had a new arch. She'd had work done. A lot of work. She had been slowly, methodically, sculpting herself into my likeness. This was no doppelganger. This was a forgery. A human forgery. The confrontation, the day of the final confrontation, was overcast and heavy with the promise of rain. I knew from Frank's surveillance that Mark would be at his weekly golf game. I drove to his apartment building, my hands steady on the wheel for the first time in weeks. The rage had burned away the fear. I waited in the sleek marble lobby until I saw her step out of the elevator to check the mail. The new Eleanor. She was wearing another sweater from my old life, a cream-colored cashmere one my mother had given me. She saw me and froze, a stack of envelopes in her hand. "Sarah," I said. Her face, my face, went pale. The serene mask slipped, revealing the frantic, desperate woman underneath. "You," she whispered. "All these years," I said, my voice dangerously calm. "You copied my hair, my clothes, my mannerisms, and then you went and bought my face." "It's my face," she hissed, her composure shattering. "He never loved you. He loved the idea of you, but you were too messy, too complicated. You had kids, you had bills, you got tired and frumpy. I gave him the perfect version, the version without the baggage. So you convinced him to leave his family, I said. The truth of it's so much more horrifying than any fantasy. You preyed on his midlife crisis, his weaknesses. You offered him a clean slate with a copy of his old wife. How pathetic are you? How pathetic is he? Get out! She snarled, her face, my face, contorted with a hatred I had never felt. He's mine now. We're happy. We're starting over. With my face? I laughed, a harsh, broken sound. Do you look in the mirror and see me? Or do you see the pathetic stalker you really are? Do you think he kisses you? Or the ghost of me? She took a step back, her eyes wild. You don't understand. He loves me. For who I am now. I looked at her, at the surgical perfection, the hollow imitation of my life. The distress I felt was no longer for my broken marriage, but for the profound human sickness laid bare before me. This was a story of a weak man and a disturbed woman, a collision of pathologies that had obliterated my family. I understand perfectly, I said quietly. You're living my life with a man who doesn't exist. The Mark I married would have been horrified by you, by what he's become. I turned and walked away. There was nothing more to say. The reckoning. The legal battle was long and brutal. My lawyer, a sharp woman named Angela Cruz, used the evidence of Sarah's stalking, the surgical records we subpoenaed, the testimony of old classmates, to paint a picture of such profound manipulation that Mark's own stability was called into question. During the custody hearing, Sarah was forced to testify. Under oath, her calm facade shattered completely. She admitted to having plastic surgery to resemble me. She admitted to tracking our movements for years. She claimed it was all for love, but the judge saw what it was: obsession. Court granted me full custody of Liam and Chloe, with Mark's visitation rights contingent on weekly psychological evaluation. The financial settlement was significant, enough to pay off the mortgage and secure the children's future. Mark didn't fight hard in the end. Faced with the cold, hard facts of Sarah's obsession in a court of law, the fantasy crumbled. The man who valued order above all else was exposed as the architect of his own chaos. I heard through my lawyer that they stayed together for a few months after the trial, but it was a union born of shared notoriety and isolation. Without the secret, without the stolen identity, the relationship had no foundation. Sarah had built her entire existence on becoming me, and in the harsh light of day, there was nothing left of her. Mark was left with a living monument to his own failure and weakness. The teachable truth. The crack in the ceiling is still there. I've decided to leave it. It's part of our history now, a reminder of the fracture we survived. Liam is 14 now. His stutter is gone, replaced by a quiet determination. He wants to be a psychologist to understand why people break. Chloe is 10, all bright eyes and fierce hugs. Her drawings are full of color again. We healed, but we are not naive. The world contains a unique and chilling kind of predator, one that doesn't want to destroy you, but to become you. The most horrifying meeting you will ever have is with the walking, talking evidence of your own disposability. The dangerous lesson I learned, the lesson I teach my children every day, is this. Your authenticity is your armor. Your messy, real, complicated human heart is your greatest strength. There are people who will try to convince you that you need to be quieter, simpler, less demanding, more perfect. Don't believe them. The Mark who walked out on our family wasn't seeking happiness. He was seeking an escape from the beautiful, complicated reality of love and family. He found it in a mirror that reflected only what he wanted to see. We're the ones who got the better deal. We got to keep what was real.